Hey y'all, so it has been way too long since I've made a video, so I wanted to come on here, and there's some topics that have been just coming up for me that I was like, okay, I finally need to just take some time and start making videos on these topics. Just being busy. I'm in fight camp right now for my fight in November, and our girls are going to be starting basketball here. They're doing Awanas coming up, so it's just busy. On top of we work out, we work, we have jujitsu, everything. So we're just busy. But before I get started, I'm just going to address this big blood spot in my eye. Things happen during jiu-jitsu. That's all I can say. So I can't even tell you what really happened. I just know that something, a hand or something bumped my eye. My contact fell out, put it back in. Didn't know anything was wrong. Got back home and was like, oh, there's a blood spot. So whatever knocked my contact out is what caused my eye to do this, but it comes with the sport. But anyway, on a serious note, what I wanted to come on here and talk about may feel, I don't know, you could consider it controversial. It can go against many people's views, but it's something that I just feel led to talk about. And it's why our votes as Christians are important. And when I'm talking about voting, I mean politically. And a lot of times faith and politics are a topic that many people don't want to talk about. It causes a lot of tension. People don't know how to agree to disagree, how to hear other people's points, how to research other people's points, and to just listen to opposing arguments, just to see what other people think. Even if you know at the end of the video or the conversation, you're not going to change your stance. It's just good to hear other people's opposing arguments and views to solidify your view, if anything, or maybe change your view. I know as I've gotten older, I'm 33. If you look back at, we'll just say, senior year of when Obama was running, my political view and what I believe and what I would vote for has completely changed. And it has a lot to do with hearing opposing arguments and doing my own research. And the number one thing that drives my political view is my faith. And that is where it can become divisive, is because there are other people who are proclaiming Christians that love Jesus that wouldn't agree with my stance. And so it begins to feel like, the other side is calling the other side not Christian and things like that. And it can get very hurtful, it can get very deep. But the point of this video is I wanted to really discuss why it's so important that as Christians, we really get it right when we go to the polls. And this isn't me telling anybody how to vote, but to think about why you're voting for who you're voting for, and maybe to reconsider who you're voting for, regardless of who it is. Just think about it and think about why you're voting. What's really driving your decision to vote for? That could be presidential. It could be for your governor, for the Senate, whoever you're voting for. Just really think about, especially as Christians, our votes matter. And I want to first point out the fact that, again, a lot of people don't like or don't necessarily feel that, God is necessarily in politics or in the government. But if you just look biblically, God blesses nations that follow and honor him. And Israel was an example of what it looked like when a nation follows God and when a nation does not follow God. And I think we have to take that serious. We can't just look at it as that's an Old Testament thing. It only applies to Israel as a nation. I'm not talking about the people, but specifically a nation that, you know, and Americans, especially just Western culture, it's like we are so privilege minded that I think we just feel like we're untouchable, whether God is on our side or isn't on our side. We believe we're just untouchable. We're unbreakable. We're unbeatable. And of course, you can dive in deeper to, is America a Christian nation or not? There's so many details of history that you can dive into and not decide, but really, you know, look at the truth. Were we built on Christian values or not? Were everybody who started this country fully Christian or not? Do your research on it. But overall, even if you don't fully agree that this was originally a Christian nation, there are Christian values that helped this country strive and be what it is. But if we don't continue in valuing God, specifically Jesus Christ, we have to be very specific now, because everybody claims higher power in God and you don't know who they're talking about. I'm talking about Jesus Christ. If our values are not aligning with him as a nation, of course, not everybody's going to agree with that, because not everybody's a Christian, but Christians need to stand on that truth and look at the examples in the Bible from other non-believing nations and compared to Israel when they were following him. And then to look at Israel, who was a believing nation, and how they began to turn and follow other gods and what would happen. That's just a true fact. And that is why our vote matters as Christians. I think we've forgotten why we're voting, and it's become more of a popularity contest. It's become more of who we like better. I think we look at candidates of who's more likable and sometimes forget to look at, but what are they standing for? I'm sure there's people in your family that you can say like, man, I really don't like that person. Like, you know, that might be a person that I wouldn't necessarily invite over all the time to come sit with me, but the things that they stand for, I agree with. But necessarily personality wise, they might be arrogant or a little stuck up or a little bit harsh on how they speak, but the things that they stand for, I would agree with. And that's what I feel like we as Christians need to take a step back from the way the world is thinking of people. Look at Saul. Look at Israel when they wanted a king and how they picked out Saul. It was off of appearance and you know, he was tall, strong, and what they thought a king should be, versus look at who God thought a king should be. David, little young boy, right? How do we think a giant should be beat? Wouldn't have been from a stone. We would have thought we needed all this armor. God doesn't view it that way. And I think we forget that when we're voting for people. Maybe the delivery from the person is terrible, but overall, at the bottom line, what values are they standing for? And those values turn into laws. They turn into policies. And that shapes our country. Policies and laws shape our country. And if we are going to be a country that honors God, our laws and our policies need to be something that honors God. And we can sit up here and argue, you know, church and state separation. Any Christian that really, really admits to it, you don't take your faith out of any part of your life. And if you do, I would ask you to pray about it and look in the Bible and see, where does it say that? Christ should be in every single part of your life. Your mindset, your choices, how you do things, everything. There's no way to separate your values of the way you would want your country ran from how Christ calls us to live our life. There's no way to separate that. If you're honest, there is absolutely no way to separate that. If Christ has really changed you and you've allowed the Holy Spirit to live and really embed himself in you, you don't separate the two. So we can throw that out the window. And I'm sure people will argue that in the comments. That's fine, right? But how we want our nation to be blessed by God, he's not going to bless a nation that does not honor him. Find where it says that happens. He doesn't bless people in that way. And I don't mean that in a transactional way. I mean that in a relational way. Right? So, and another thing that has been something that's kind of that I've noticed, that I question from a Christian also perspective of why do we vote like that? I'll just bring it up. Kamala. A lot of Christians are simply choosing to vote for her because of her ethnicity. Maybe the world does that. And it's funny, it's the same people that quote Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. We're supposed to be judging people off the content of their character, not the color of their skin. But yet that's how a lot of us Christian, I'm only speaking to Christians. I don't expect other people to live by this standard. But we're voting for her based off of her ethnicity or her gender. Because it would be a great thing to have a first woman of color for president, simply because of that. Not caring what policies she carries or brings, right? Take that how you want to. But I'm just saying, think about why you're voting for the person you're voting for. And if it's not based on policies that line with your Christian values, then what is it? What is it? Again, I'm not telling you who to vote for, because that's your choice. That is your choice. Maybe you don't feel led to vote for either one. Maybe there's something in you that's like, I can't stand with either one of these people. Maybe you do like the policies of one person, but you just can't stand with their character. Great policies, but I just feel like I can't support somebody with that character. That's between you and God. But if you do choose to vote, think about how it's shaping our nation. And our nation needs God. And as a Christian, that's what you believe. And that should represent how you vote. It should represent what policies and standards you stand with. From president all the way down. Shaping your city, shaping your state, shapes your schools. That's why we homeschool right now. Can't afford the Christian school? Don't trust the public schools and their values. They don't align with what Christ tells me that I should be teaching my kids. And I'm not going to subject them to that. I will teach them about all the different worldviews and pray that God has a personal encounter with them so that they have their own relationship with Christ. But I'm not going to battle the public school for what they want to teach and what the culture wants to teach my kids and what God wants me to. I'm not battling with that. I will expose them so that they can compare God's truth to the world's truth for themselves. But that's why we choose to homeschool until we're able to afford a Christian school again. And maybe that's not God's path for us. Maybe homeschool is where he wants us to have them. Or maybe it's a season. I don't know. But schools are not the same as when I was in school. It's just different. It's no longer just going to get educated. It's pushing a whole cultural view. And maybe not every public school is like that. I can't speak for every public school. But I know the ones that I've researched that are close around me, no thanks. And that's not hate speech. People will turn it into that. Disagreeing with somebody is not hate speech. Hate speech is hate speech. But again, all I'm asking and all I'm encouraging people is for you to, Christians, specifically Christians, truly pray on who you're voting for, why you're voting for them, and do your own research outside of what any news outlet is saying. And look at both sides, not just one. Don't just find the articles that feed what you already believe. Look at what other Christians are saying on both sides. I'll admit, I'm a conservative Christian. I believe the conservative values line more with what I biblically should be following and living. Doesn't mean I agree with everything. Doesn't mean I'm a Republican either. I'm saying conservative values. And I base how I vote on that. Because we'd be silly not to admit that our current, more conservative choice is very arrogant, very narcissistic. Not somebody that, from what he portrays, obviously don't know him personally, but from what I see from a distance, and the only thing I can, judge from, not in a judgmental way, but hey, if an orange or an apple is an orange or an apple. We're constantly analyzing things all day. So let's not go there with everything's judgmental. You're judging. But from what he presents, personality-wise, is not a person that I would necessarily want to call a friend or have over for dinner. But, and again, that's not me telling you to vote for Trump. It's not me telling you to vote for Kamala. I know who I'm voting for based off of my Christian values. And I personally don't find any Christian values, or enough, I'll say. I won't say there's not any. There's not enough Christian values on any Democrat policy that I can align with. So I either vote conservative. If an independent aligns more conservatively, then fine. Or I'm not voting. That's just where I stand. But just be willing to hear other people, even with this video. I know it might trigger people to start attacking me and my views and everything. I'm just saying, consider. Listen to other people's point of view. Well, maybe, let me see. What are they saying? Why are they saying that? Nah, I still stand where I stand. I don't agree with that. And that's not just politics. That's anything. Expose yourself to opposing arguments so that it either solidifies where you stand or it makes you dive deeper and maybe change positions. And always be praying. Always be praying. But this video's been long enough, so I'm going to shut it down now. So with that, I leave you with this. Pray without ceasing, continue to nurture your family, and continue to train like a war machine.